day, folks. My name is Jim Worthen. The show is Worthen One-on-One. We're here on Channel 17 Cox Cable in Santa Barbara every Monday at 2 o'clock, Wednesday at 5 o'clock, and Friday at 7 o'clock. I'm staggering through the times. We're also on TVSB website you go to On Demand and you go down to the last person. I'm always last in line, Worthen One-on-One. Or you can go to YouTube and Worthen One-on-One, and there's a variety of shows there over the last year. My guest today, Lou Barnett, I had him research a show that I wanted him to see, and he put in the name of the show and Worthen One-on-One on YouTube, and there it was. Amazing what we can do today. My family says it's an embarrassment that I'm all over. I'm in the internet, and I tease about my granddaughter saying, I'm so embarrassed, but your great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter's going to be embarrassed 200 years from now. And she says she didn't say that. She didn't deny thinking it, though, so you have to watch your family reaction to you. The guest today is one of my longest political allies. It goes back to Sacramento, Senator Bob Lagomarsino, in 1966. And sometimes we weren't completely coordinated with each other, and then we were not. And then he got me into real trouble in politics, and something I haven't been able to live down that we'll get to. I'll tell you, it has something to do with Roger Stone and Paul Manafort, and you know the trouble they've been in the last 2 years. In fact, Manafort spent 2 years in prison because of it. So we have had a long relationship and a valued one. Lou Barnett, how are you, Lou?
I'm always great anytime I'm with you, Jim.
God bless you. Where were you born?
Long Beach, California, or as they used to say in the old days, Iowa by the Sea. That was the nickname for Long Beach. When people moved from other states, they would settle in different places. A lot of the Oklahoma Okies settled in the Kern County, Bakersfield area. Well, Long Beach was Iowa by the sea.
Really? I didn't know. I learned something every time I talk to you. So how long did you live there?
Long enough to learn to walk. And then the family moved, and we lived in a number of other places around Los Angeles County. My father had breathing problems, and the doctors back in those days would say, well, you need a drier climate, you need a higher climate, you need whatever. So we moved all over Los Angeles County on doctor's orders to find a place where he would be healthier.
So they'd send him to some place and they'd say, oh, there's smog here, you have to go over here. Oh, there's smog there.
Smog was not an issue that I remember being discussed back in those days.
That was horse and buggy, I forgot.
Not quite horse and buggy, but close. We actually had these concrete things in our backyard where you burned your trash. You didn't set it out for the government to come by and collect it. You just took the stuff out there and you burned it in the incinerator. We also had clotheslines. These are lines of rope, and you would hang your clothes over them to dry them without using a machine.
Was that where the term clothespin came from? We're not that old, folks, really. We just have great memories. Lou, where did you go to school? Around different places in LA County, or
Yeah,
elementary?
Yeah, grade school, a number of different schools. And I vividly remember that one year I was printing, the next year I was writing, the next year I was printing. When that happened, my parents decided to put me into the local Catholic school because they thought this didn't make a lot of sense. So not only did I get a good education at St. Paul the Apostle in Westwood, and then later in North Hollywood when we moved again, but I also became a Catholic in the process. I'd been going to Protestant churches with my parents, but converted to Catholicism in Westwood.
And you blame your 17 children on the Pope? Is that, no, we'll talk about that later. That was back in the days when Catholics didn't like Presbyterians for some reason. I don't know why. They wouldn't give me communion. They wouldn't. Their kids wouldn't come to my church's parties, and but that's changed a lot. Although I have a godson who's 40, and he still is uncomfortable going to a Protestant church. he was, so.
Or the next time I come up, we'll have a religious discussion on your program.
We always do. So you went to Catholic high school. After that, where did you go?
I went to San Fernando Valley State College. There's been a lot of inflation over the years, as we're all aware. That is now called San Fernando Valley State University. So I went to a college, which is now a university, moved up to University of the Pacific in Stockton from there, and actually didn't complete college, got too involved in politics. Although I have gone back to UC Berkeley, taking courses in various business management schools. I have taken courses at the National Judicial College in Reno, Nevada.
They should give you your degree from Cal State just for that. No, I bet there's paperwork that if you file it, because there's paperwork, I was told, because I quit for various reasons, politics being part of it, with 2 incompletes. And I went and tried to explain to them that they should, I was Phi Beta Kappa, all A's, 1B at UCSB. And I tried to explain they should give me my degree, and they wanted me to take those 2 courses. I think it's because I would have to pay money to them. I don't think they're altruistic, and I think they also lost all my records by now. There was a fire, and riots, and I got very confused in those days. So you're up in Stockton, and where'd you go from there? You stay there and go to work, or?
No, came back to Los Angeles. I've had some minor short-term jobs, projects that I had done, but became an area director for the LA County Republican Party.
You went into politics.
Went into politics. I would run around and help assembly districts on their voter registration drives. When I told my dad that I wanted to go into to politics, he said, "Oh, that's great. My lawyer is Joe Ball. He's a big Democrat in Long Beach, and I'll put you together with him." I said, "Nah, I don't think I'm going that direction."
Now, had you met your wife by then, or where did you meet her?
No, I met her in politics later on. I was running a campaign in the San Joaquin Valley in Modesto for a guy named Claire Berryhill, who went on to be an assemblyman, and then went on to the state senate, and then his sons followed him in politics as well. It was there that I learned that what I always thought were almonds were actually almonds.
And
Now technically they are almonds, and technically they're almonds, but something happens in the process between growing them and selling them to the middleman, and the middleman and eating it at home.
And it was there that you learned that Basque food was pretty good.
There was some Basque food there. There was also, that may have been the first place where I discovered steak and eggs was a meal at any time of the day, and it was a big steak and a fair number of eggs.
I hate to steal stories, but when I was running Congressman, then Senator Bob Lugger-Messino's campaign, we were traveling around. He picked me up in the morning. We would go all day. We'd drop me off at midnight, pick me up the next, we get maybe 4 hours sleep. And one day we were in Santa Paula at breakfast time, and he says, "Oh, this restaurant has the best steak and eggs. We got to go there." Went in, sat there, and I have an ironic sense of humor. And I said, "Bob, I just counted." He said, "What?" "This is the 17th meal in a row that we had steak in." Gained almost 20 pounds in that campaign. Good food and a lot of driving. So you're working as a staffer for the Central Committee?
Yeah, for the Los Angeles County Republican Party. I left there to work on Nixon's reelection campaign. I've been the national political director of Reagan's PAC, Citizens for the Republic. I was political director of the American Conservative Union. Worked on Pete Wilson's campaign for the first one for governor, his reelection campaign. I had an officious title as one of the Northern California vice chair of Bush's failing reelection campaigns.
I'm going to pull you back. You're running through these too quickly. So you're with the LA County Central Committee. That was about the time that a guy named Gaylord Parkinson became chairman of the state party, and he set up a series, I think, of about 7 people that worked for him in something called Cal Plan, where he had, like you, permanent staff that worked with each central committee and each volunteer organization in their area. You were in LA County. Was Mike Deaver at that time Cal Plan from the county line in LA to Monterey, or was that a little later that Mike Deaver came in?
Well, he came in with obviously Reagan as governor of California in '66.
Oh, but he started out where he learned. Reagan was Cal Plan.
He started out with the state party, but I wasn't that plugged into things statewide at that time, so I'm not sure if he had anything to do with LA County. I certainly did not run across him.
Yeah, he was the Cal Plan guy, as I say, from Monterey to the LA County line, and he went on to be in the Reagan administration governor and president, and he's the guy that was called Nancy's best friend. He was the guy that she could go cry on his shoulder, and without a confrontation with Ronnie, and he smoothed everything out. And he was a great guy, and but he drank a lot and died much too young.
Well, I don't know anybody that says they died too late, but he was also the one that grasped Reagan and gave him the Heimlich maneuver once to get a peanut lodged in his throat out to, so he for a lot of my friends who think that he and some others and around Reagan were the bad guys because they weren't conservative enough, I said, well, you know, if it wasn't for him, Reagan would have been dead.
Well, Mike was not philosophical, really.
No.
And in fact, the media remembers him as the stage man. He's the guy, they first noticed it at the anniversary of Normandy, when Reagan had to speak there. And the way they set it up, the way the cameras, the way the media had to be, there was he, the gravestones, the beach, and the ocean. And that he was able to do that always, just stage the show for the eyes of the consumer. And he did that even in his youth in Sacramento, when he went to Sacramento with Reagan. So you're over there in beautiful downtown Bakersfield. I know somebody who spent 3 days one night in Bakersfield, and I love Bakersfield. It's a wonderful place and produces a lot of, if they don't stop us, a lot of our energy for California. And at least they don't wear turbans and threaten to kill jihad against us. They may get mad at us from time to time, but the worst they can do is honk their horns and yell cowboy things at us. So you ran Claire Berryhill's campaign.
Successful campaign, yes.
Got him started. Got that family into politics. Where did you go from there?
Besides formal activity, and I've gone from being paid in politics to doing other things and staying involved in politics on a volunteer basis. And where, of course, we connected was through the California Young Republicans. I was involved in LA County, in the College Republicans too, statewide. Ran for state chairman of the College Republicans. And then built the organization in Los Angeles County. And then some of our mutual friends who were more moderate, if not philosophically, at least in their approach to politics, were running the Young Republicans, and I would run campaigns against them year after year after year.
Now, were you for Hicks or against Hicks?
I was against Hicks.
He was a cotton grower, businessman in the Central Valley.
Fresno, yes. But every one of those conventions that I lost, I came away thinking, I learned something. And then the year that we beat them and elected Emil Franzi state chairman, taking the control of the organization.
Such a mistake. Go ahead.
Away from them. I reflected, this was the first convention where I didn't learn anything new. Because as we all do in life, we learn things one of three ways, as a famous comedian once said. We read about it, we watch other people doing it, or we piss on the electric fence for ourselves. Well, I had been learning every time I lost a new trick, and that year when I got Emil elected, there were no more things that I could learn from them.
You didn't get involved in the liberal Young Republicans prior to the '64 convention in San Francisco. It was the liberal Young Republicans.
Well, I was still in high school. I was in teenage Republicans then, although my earliest quote-unquote political activity would have been Fred Schwartz's anti-communism crusade and various anti-communist activities. Young Americans for Freedom.
What I wanted to be sure was the San Francisco convention of the Young Republicans, which I didn't go to, but I'm a little older than you, was the Young Republicans have been controlled by Warren Republicans, Earl Warren, and for years. And they held a convention, and the battle was to endorse Barry Goldwater. And literally, I don't think any guns were fired, but one or both sides were armed, and it was a battle. And I think the Young Republicans did endorse Barry Goldwater, and it went on and moved more and more conservative till they let people like you in. And, I mean, it was very interesting. We had the Birchers, we had the Purple Gang. I don't know who they were. They just picked a name and did crazy things. And then there were the moderates and people like you. And I even figured out one time how to be a delegate from 5 different counties, because we had Ventura, Santa Barbara, that were in the Senate district of my senator. I lived in Yolo. Then we had Sacramento, and I had some sort of contact in San Luis Obispo, and I became a member and could be a delegate from all those counties. The wonderful things you learn in volunteer politics. They are exciting. It's almost the algebra of politics, where you learn logic and how to get things done. So you and I met, and that would have been in Sacramento, I think, when Hicks was running for chairman of the Republican Party. And
of the Young Republicans.
Yeah, Young Republicans. And I had gone to Sacramento as legislative assistant to Senator Bob Lagomarsino. By the way, you may not know this, I created the term legislative assistant. No one had ever had it before then, and I got the first card. And so
I did not know that.
Yeah. Well, he wanted me to really work on getting the bills because he was so popular and so accepted by the Democrats, and Ron Reagan was Ron Reagan's senator because of the ranch, and we had 103 bills, and he needed somebody, when the DA of the county came and had a problem and he wanted legislation and he gave us the information, somebody had to go down to the legislative analyst, had to get the bill put into proper form, the routine, and I was a legislative assistant, and met a lot of strange people who wanted bills. So what were you doing in Sacramento? Just Young Republicans?
Yeah, mostly Young Republicans. I was up there a little bit after we got Claire elected to the state legislature, but the political activity revolves around the governor in one way or another if you have a governor of your party.
Right.
Otherwise, politics is more diffused.
Did you join the governor's staff or department?
No, I had a lot of friends in the governor's office, but I was not employed there. I was busy on legislative campaigns.
You were close to Sandy Quinn and Phil Battaglia, right? No, that's a bad joke, folks. Look it up in the history books.
Yeah, no, I was with the Nofziger Meese wing of the governor's office.
Meese is a judicial and legal expert, and has done more in that regard to change the country than any other man. He vets all the judges that any Republican has done in the last 20 years. Of course, he was Attorney General. He came to Sacramento in that year my recollection is out of Alameda County District Attorney's Office.
Yep.
And he became clemency secretary for Ronald Reagan, to see who might get a pardon, who might get clemency and stuff. That was his first bailiwick. You remember that? Was that right? Am I right? You can always say, Jim, you're stupid, you're wrong.
No, that was right. And his brother served on the Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board with me in the Wilson administration.
Yeah, so you, during the Reagan years, did you have any job or office in the Reagan administration?
Well, the main thing I did was being National Political Director of his Political Action Committee, Citizens for the Republic, which was not only involved in peripherally in his presidential campaign, but more importantly, in terms of getting conservatives nominated for the House and the Senate. We got involved in governorships and occasionally state legislative races around the country.
And it kept his presidential hopes alive through the dark years of Ford and on.
Yeah, the history there is Reagan lost against Ford in 76, and money kept coming into the Reagan campaign. And initially, what you normally think about doing is, well, we lost, let's pay the bills and return the money to the people that gave it to us. But the money just kept coming in, so the folks in the campaign made the decision, well, obviously they know where he lost and they're still sending money, so it's intended to further Reagan's vision of America. So that resulted in a decision to convert the campaign funds that were left over into a political action committee to further Reagan's political policies around the country. And then later when I joined up with the PAC, we were also involved at the state level. And we would call all the old Reagan people and say, we're looking at this candidate or that candidate. What do you have to say about him? So we did that. I also had an interesting role. One year, there's always a fight about deficit spending in the United States. And both parties claim they want to stop it. Republicans do a little bit better job of not spending as much as Democrats, but the deficit spending goes on under both parties. I came up with the idea out of a conversation with one of the big anti-tax groups in the United States that Congress acts when the people have adopted enough decisions at the state level to trigger a constitutional amendment. Because the last thing Congress wants is the people coming up with the solution. So I was talking to my friend, and he said, yeah, we need a couple more states. And then we will be able to force Congress to act. And I came up with the idea that, well, the legislature may not adopt these because they don't want to get involved in upsetting the congressman in Washington, but maybe we could do it by initiative. And I put together an effort in Montana and in California with Pete Wilson as the head of it to put initiatives on the ballot in both states, because both of them, by their constitution, give the legislative authority to the people in an initiative process. So we had it on the ballot in both states. The Rosebird Court decided that that was illegal, that only the people in the legislature have the authority to do that. The Democrats in Montana did the same thing. So instead of being able to force Congress to adopt a balanced budget amendment to the U.S. Constitution, what I was able to do was create case law in both states by their state Supreme Courts, saying that the initiative process didn't really apply to everything anymore.
You know, and then you recalled Rose Bird
And then
for doing that.
Then we had the fight to get rid of Rose Bird, and I wrote a book, Jerry Brown's Judicial Legacy, about all of these stupid, crazy people.
Still could be bought on Amazon?
Which can still be bought online, yes. Or a revised version. I put out a revised version, slightly updated, when Jerry was running for governor again in California, making his comeback.
The name of the book?
Jerry Brown's Judicial Legacy. And he was, when he was first governor, he was appointing people like everybody does now that's woke. He was appointing people because of the color of their skin, because of their sexual orientation, because maybe they grew pot in their home, whatever. And these were just really, by and large, bad appointments. Completely unqualified, had ethical problems, one thing after another. The second time he was governor, he made bad appointments, and philosophically they would have arguably been worse than the ones he appointed before, but at least they understood the law better than that first round of appointments they made that were just god awful.
Well, when Ronald Reagan was president, the system we had for us to appoint was the legislature in the judicial area, Santa Barbara County, the Central Committee, and the bar. Well, I controlled two of those votes. No, Bob Lugger-Messino controlled one, and I got a young Republican elected chairman of the Central Committee, and then there was the bar, and that's the way Judge Ricard became judge in Santa Barbara County. Now his son and his loved ones claim that it was on being mayor and all the wonderful things he did, but I had two of the votes. I make a lot of enemies by making claims like that. So now let's back up. When we almost got your wife killed, when did you meet Jane?
I met her in college, Young Republicans, and
in Sacramento, Stockton.
Well, I was running all over the state in college, Young Republicans. So
not when you were in college and recruiting.
When I was in college, yeah, and then after I had gotten out of college, I was working on the Claire Berry Hill campaign, and Jane brought her college Young Republicans from the Bay Area over to help us on the phone banks, calling voters. Back then, it was strange, Jim. You know, people had a phone in their home, and they would actually pick it up if you called, and they would talk to you on the phone, and you would tell them that you were calling for a campaign. Today, as you well know, you look at your phone and say, I don't know who that is. I'm not talking to them. So that was the first campaign outside of supporting me for college chairman of the Young Republicans. That was the first campaign we worked on together. And then we got married after she graduated, and we didn't have 17 kids, but we did have 7. The 4 girls, 3 boys.
What year did you get married?
We got married in 71.
Okay. That was after you had met me, but well before the incident where she almost got killed.
She didn't almost get killed, but yeah, she was at the head table, and our political opponents at that Young Republican meeting rushed the podium to try to physically take the meeting
They wanted to block some bad person from becoming state chairman of the Young Republicans.
Yeah, who was that bad person that they didn't want as chairman?
I don't know. He had Paul Manafort and Lynn Knopfsinger and Roger Stone's support. And he was an old guy. He was 36 by then. I mean, it's just, it was amazing that it was an election.
They didn't want you elected as chairman of the California Young Republicans.
And I think I won by 3 votes, and it was because I had learned something from my dad and from Bob Lugger-Messino. And that is, and I'll do it right now. Lou, I want you to give me your word. Will you?
Yes.
Now, Lou, you know that your word is the only thing you're going to have in life, that your word is your bond. Now, you're going to keep that word no matter what, unless I release you. Do you understand that? Well, I went around the state and talked to people running for Young Republicans, and in Davis there was a nice group of young women, and they were in college Republicans, and I made the pitch and they committed to me. And just before Jane was attacked in Orange County when I was elected chairman, the girl from Davis stood on the floor crying with all the boys and other college Republicans around her and voted for me because she kept her word. And so it was an interesting time, education in politics, down to arrest the sons of bitches for knocking the table over.
But that's one of the real truisms in politics if you're around for any length of time. It's not how many votes you have, it's not how fluent you are, it's how good your word is.
That's right.
Because if your word isn't good, okay, I got his vote, but I don't know if I really have his vote because he lies a lot. So your word really, ultimately you do business with people that you may be less philosophical with or normally don't vote with if they keep their word. As opposed to trying to do business with people whose word is just no good.
We needed, you mentioned him earlier, who could have been on Assemblyman forever. They became mayor of San Francisco. What was his name? Willie Brown.
Oh, Willie Brown, yeah.
Our vice president's boyfriend for years. And he was married, though. Well,
she was.
Yeah. Willie was a freshman assemblyman, and we had a bill that got over unanimously from the Senate, and it was in a committee in the Assembly, and it had to do with strange things, dog napping, and he was concerned that. I won't go into the weeds on it, but it used to be people were just picking up dogs like crazy and taking them to Davis and other medical test sites. And we were passing a law that would cut that back. And Willie was concerned that we were making something a felony, that the kid down the street could pick up your dog thinking it was a stray and took it home. And so we went over it and satisfied his needs to do that, and I said, now, Bob said, ask him if we have his commitment. Look him in the eyes and explain it to him. And I said, okay. And so I said, well, what if he backs out of his commitment? Tell him if he backs out of his commitment, we'll never deal with him again on anything. So I went, got his commitment, told him exactly what the senator said, and we never had a problem. I think maybe he learned a lesson because he became a pretty good politician and got people to keep their word to him. And so, so you're now in the post-Reagan era. Did you go to Washington with him at all?
I had a couple of appointments back there where I did something for a short period of time. One of them was they have these White House conferences on various issues from time to time, and one of them was a White House conference on libraries and information services. And I was appointed to the advisory committee on this thing. And you go to a lot of meetings, you get an opportunity to fly to Washington, see friends while you're back there, take care of some business, and fly home. But we got to the White House conference, which was held in DC with delegates from all 50 states and some of the territories as well. And the person, the chairman of our conference came from Connecticut, and he picked the guy that had chaired their conference in Connecticut to chair the national one because he'd done a good job in Connecticut. Well, the lighting was a problem. They had some people on the floor creating issues, and it was so bad that the guy quit and flew home. And then we needed somebody to chair the White House conference after knowing that there are lighting problems, there are problems with people on the floor, et cetera, et cetera.
Who's stupid enough to take that job?
Who's stupid enough to take that job? Yeah. So I said, look, I can do this, and I'm not as you know. If I'm promoting somebody else, I'm pretty good at it. I'm not a real good self-promoter. So, I kept saying it again and again and again, and I found, look, we're still talking about it an hour and a half later. I said, look, I can handle this, period. And at that point, people ran out of discussion, decided I would do it. I got up there and I handled it, and it went well. But that's because of all the experience I'd had in conventions, credentials committee, running things from the floor,
young
being
Republicans.
Chairman, basically, yeah,
yes.
the young Republicans. And I mean, you learn little tricks. Like we had one guy that was just making a nuisance of himself on the floor. We answered his question. Then he brought it up again. I said, look, you can't keep bringing it up. We've answered it. That's it. He brought it up one more time, and I said, look, you brought it up before. It's been addressed. If you attempt to bring this up again, I'm going to cut your mic off. So, everybody was really happy that I did that. But if I hadn't warned him and set the ground rules so that everybody knew what the rules were, if I just cut him off, some people would have been unhappy.
Right.
But the fact that I had put him on notice, everybody bought into what was being done, that it whether it was fair or not, and I think it was fair, but everybody felt it was fair because everybody knew what was going on. It wasn't being done arbitrarily.
Well, I want to rush through this last part till we get to the current. You served 8 years as appointment of Pete Wilson as governor. In the next office next door, the head of the Agricultural Labor Relations was Mike Stoker for 8 years. What was your job? Stealing people's money? Keeping poor people from getting it?
No. I was chair of the Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board.
So you were helping people steal the state's money. On the pejorative side, there would be those people that said we were helping people steal money, and then there would be those people who would say we were preventing people from getting their money. The Employment Development Department determines whether somebody's eligible for unemployment or state disability insurance, and if they are denied, they can appeal to the Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board, and we would have our administrative law judges
hear their cases. And I mean, like we're hearing 100,000 cases. I mean, huge volume of cases. And
Now,
then
did you mention that Berry Hill was once on that years before?
No, but Ed Meese's brother was on the board when I was there, and then we had Democrat appointees as well on the board, and it was collegial. I made a point of having good relationships with everybody and trying to knit everybody together so that we may be philosophically different, but that didn't necessarily determine how we were going to be voting on individual cases. Besides the cases that were heard in the field, those that were then appealed to the board itself, the 7 board members would be assigned 2 to a case, and if there was a split on the decision, a third person would be assigned to sit on that case, and that would be the chairman. So I would, if it was split, I would decide who the third person was going to be on that committee, as well as handling my cases that I was assigned every week myself.
That's why I called you the Solomon of the unemployment review board, right? King Solomon. No.
Yeah. Well, I put total quality management into effect to run the agency. So basically, the rank and file were making decisions to fix the problems that the agency had. I did reach out to other state agencies to figure out how they were handling their problems. And your friend's agency was one of those that I communicated with it as well. What kind of problems do you have? How do you solve them? Before I went ahead with putting in total quality management at my agency.
So we want to talk about upcoming politics. What have you been doing the last 10, 15 years?
Well, one of the things that I did was I set up Larry Elder's campaign for governor in the recall election.
Called me. Yeah.
So
stay out of this, Jim. We don't want you to ruin this guy. He's a good guy. You racist.
I don't think that's what I said, but yeah, we did have that campaign. I've worked on redistricting with this phony redistricting commission. Some people that are well-intentioned but extremely naive think that politics occurs over here in this election and that there's no politics in life, right? So we can have a commission that won't obviously have any politics involved in it because these are just regular people. Well, the horrible thing about this is that it just hides the politics. So I've been involved in that a few times in California.
Now, the last time you were on my show, you were putting on a event here that brought people in from various states. I know you've had another one here and didn't invite me to either. But tell me about this group that has to do with, I believe, blending and cross-pollinating local legislators. Is that accurate?
The American Legislative Exchange Council is one of the projects that I've dreamed up in my lifetime, together with a friend from Illinois who I knew in Washington, D.C. We created an organization of conservative state legislators across the country. I don't consider myself a founder. I consider the first group of legislators that we got together at a meeting at a hotel in D.C. as the founders of the organization. But I was...
About how long ago was that?
73.
Wow, that's older than I thought. So have you met every year since, or?
Oh, they have national meetings once or twice a year, plus they have regional breakout meetings. They create model legislation, not the staff, but the legislators themselves. The staff only supports the legislators in their work. unlike all of the other organizations of state legislators, they actually pay dues to the organization. So
What
it's
were
really,
you doing here in Santa Barbara?
we had a breakout session dealing with tax and fiscal issues.
That's what these guys with big hats on and guns, I don't know if they've guns, these legislators from Texas who didn't think the rest of the world was as conservative as it should be.
They have a point to some degree.
So when's the next meeting here? And am I invited?
We'll have to put you on the invite list again.
So that's an ongoing project of yours.
Yeah, it doesn't take up much time, but I'll do a speech at one of their breakout sessions here in Santa Barbara or any other time they ask me to go somewhere.
You don't invite me to do speeches. It's a strange, true story.
Well, I wouldn't have you speak any place where I was going to speak because I wouldn't want to look so poor in comparison.
True story. I had to do something at my church a year and a half ago, and I got up and there were about 150 people there, and I said, as unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, and they cracked up. The fact is, except Young Republican board meetings, I have never been comfortable or given speeches to more than 10 or 15 people. People don't, they say, oh, you talked to thousands of people. You were on the radio and there was tens of thousands of people. I said, yeah, but I don't have to look at them. You know, and it's just a strange syndrome of probably stage fright. Young Republicans, if I had a board meeting, or a convention, I went down at 6 in the morning, checked everything, checked the podium, checked where people were going to be sitting, walked around, then went back up, showered, and got ready, and came down and ran the meeting. But I had, in my mind, controls. And so I am unaccustomed. I won't speak to any of your groups. I'm sorry. I'll take questions and answers, but I won't speak. How much was that? What's it called? We're sitting here. We have to say, taken control of the Congress.
Lower house, yep.
No,
House of Representatives.
Check. It's the Congress. The other's the Senate.
Senate.
And no, I think that's in the Constitution. If it isn't, I'll make sure it gets in. It was a bloody battle, one that we could certainly identify with going back to Young Republicans. Legislative tricks. The media was driven crazy. For 14 votes, he had to get 218. And then he won with 215. How did he do that? Because 6 were taken off. 6 people voted present, and that lowered the number
needed.
Yeah. And so things we learned in Young Republicans, those tricks. And, or maybe we were teaching them, I don't know. But I was shocked to see the attacks on the internet because I never saw Kevin McCarthy as an ideologue. But there were attacks saying that he had only voted 1% with the conservatives in Congress. He was never voting with the conservatives at all. Well, I can't believe that. I never would expect that he'd have a 100% conservative rating, but 50-50 maybe. What's the true story there philosophically?
Yeah, well, his history is he came up through the Republican ranks as a friend, protege of more moderate Republicans. But I've been pleasantly surprised at how conservative he has been, both in his leadership and his votes. in Congress. He is not a policy guy first and foremost. He hasn't ever demonstrated a compelling need to control the policy. He's been more about controlling the process.
Tactician.
More of a tactician, if you will. Yeah, that's his focus. So you can go back over the time that he was Republican leader, and you can complain about this, that, or the other thing, but you can't complain about any policy position that he ever had. Not that he didn't vote right, but he just wasn't promoting policies per se, and certainly none that we were disagreeing with.
And you certainly couldn't disagree with his building to the majority, winning.
Well, I think that there's room to criticize him for the fact we didn't win more.
This time.
This time.
2 years ago, 21 out of 21 and 21 new ones.
Yeah. He had his version of Newt Gingrich's contract with America, but Newt promoted that every time he was on TV, on radio, wherever. And McCarthy didn't do a good job of promoting that.
I didn't think it was specific enough. I thought it was watered down. It's not, we're going to do this, but how,
They were legitimate points, but he wasn't really selling it. I think that the Republican Party, which has to include the Republican National Committee, the state parties, the House and Senate leadership, have been late to the dance in terms of taking advantage of what the law is. We may not like this ballot harvesting stuff where people go out and collect ballots and turn them in. And it's open to fraud. I get that. But that's the way, law. That's the law. And if we're not using it, we're losing 3 to 8% in every key race.
And the thing the party has to learn, it isn't get out the vote, it's go get the ballots. And that's what they did in Florida. That's what the Democrats do everywhere, but that's what the Republicans in Florida learned. Lou, you're going to have to come back because we have a whole show we didn't do, and that's the life of your 7 children. And it would take a whole show. That's why I went on by it, because once I started asking questions about what did he do, what did she do, what are they doing, what about the grandchildren, how about the great-great-grandchildren, it would have gone on forever. Lou, God bless you and thank you.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.